This is Liz Colburn, host of Invited. Thanks for checking out the following podcast on Public House Media.
Disarming disability.
Hey, Nicole, how are you? Hello. I'm doing good. I think you're out on an adventure. So can you tell me where you are and maybe who you're with?
Yes, greetings from somewhere in Tennessee. I am currently driving a 25-foot 2016 Winnebago View. It is a RV. This is my first time RV driving. Very exciting. I left Tucson, we left Tucson, Arizona, and we are headed to Washington, D.C. And I am with two incredibly fantastic individuals. I'm with Jessica Cox and her husband, Patrick.
Yes. Hi, Jessica. Hi, Pat.
Hello. Great.
How's it going?
So good. Can you tell us, so Jessica and Pat, tell us what you guys are up to. Why are you in this RV? Where are you going? Where are you headed? What is this adventure?
Well, we are headed to a big celebration of the Americans with Disabilities Act. The 30th anniversary is this year, as many people know, and we are going to I'll be flying the senator who was the lead sponsor of the Americans with Disabilities Act back in 1990, former Senator Harkin, and I'll be taking him on a flight to commemorate the 30 years and bring some awareness to the ADA, to bring some awareness to some of the improvements we can continue to do with disabilities in the workplace and other work that can be done. So we're excited to be on that trip, and the fact that I called you up literally maybe 2 weeks ago, less than that, and I said, Nikki, I know you want to know about what's going on with the 30th anniversary of Americans with Disabilities Act, and we need someone to come with us. And do you know of anyone, or if you wanted to come? And you connected me with Sarah, which I've never met Sarah.
True. I love it so much because we all are, all of us are limb different individuals, and I know that we've all been in like spaces, but you hadn't met Sarah yet. So, I was unable to go because I'm physically now back at work, and so knew that I wouldn't be somebody who would be able to, unfortunately, hop along for the adventure. But as you started telling me, I was like, what friend, singular, do I have that is really into aviation and who really loves traveling and road trips and who also is a disability nerd? I wonder, do I know any of those people? Who could that be? And I called Sarah and I was like, I know you've never met Jessica before or Pat, but here's what they're up to. Here are the spaces that I've seen them in and what they're up to. And wouldn't this be a cool adventure? And now here we are, and you guys are actually on the adventure together. I'm so excited for you guys.
We are. It's so exciting. And really, like, if I just added an apparatus for me to hang off of and some houseplants, this would be all of my favorite things all together, which is just so incredible. And I'm really excited. So we are booking it to DC. We left 2 days ago, and we are getting to DC tonight. So we've got maybe 5.5 hours left of driving. And Patrick and I have both been kind of taking shifts, which has been pretty cool.
We don't really get wiped out, but we can still get the job done.
Yeah.
Nice. I love that. And what is, so tell on, what is the hubbub that will be happening once you complete this first round of the road trip where you actually get to Washington, D.C. and you're able to actually meet Senator Harkin? What is the extra hubbub that goes along with this adventure?
Well, the Air Coupe is 80 years old this year, and you can talk a little bit about it because I kind of educated you a little bit about that airplane.
So the cool thing is that this is the 80th anniversary of the Air Coupe, and the Air Coupe is an aircraft that is designed that uses 2 control points. So it has a yoke
and throttle.
And a throttle. And other aircrafts will have a yoke and a throttle and then 2 rudder pedals. So people will use 4 different parts of their body to interact with those 4 different components. But the cool thing about the Air Coupe is that it is far more accessible because it only has 2 points that it needs interactions with. So Jessica is able to fly that with her feet, which is really cool. So it's a specific type of aircraft that has sort of its specific culture. So we're going to meet up and have an event with other Air Coupe plane enthusiasts in celebration of the 80th anniversary, which is so cool to be able to lump both of those things together. And I also envision myself, my like little flight attendant life, just sort of like being there, helping like guide people, you know, these are the emergency exits, and, you know, like showing all of the fun things, you know, like here's our pilot, Jessica, and just sort of being that like warm host support staff to be fun. And even in the RV, when we take off, it's like, okay, you know, are we, is cabin secure? Are we okay to fly? Which is just really kind of fun. So that's a little bit of my job, is making sure that all the overhead bins are tidied. And even like packing the RV has been such a flight attendant skill. I was like, oh, I know how to pack things in tiny spaces. So it's been really fun, really, really fun.
Yes. And then actually when you do, so all of that is incredible. When you guys actually do the flight for the celebration of specifically the ADA, what is that going to look like? When you nabbed my favorite person, Senator Harkin, come along with you, what's that day going to look like?
Oh, that's going to be, I'm going to take him up on a flight, and he's a pilot, of course. So he is a big aviation enthusiast as a pilot himself, and it'll be flight up in the pattern, talk a little bit about, you know, how it was like, what it was like with the ADA, and how can we continue to improve with areas like disabilities in the workplace and other things like that. So we'll have some dialogue there to include for people to hear his whole perspective, and it's, I'm looking forward to it. We're going to have a great conversation, a very brief one in the air.
How cool. You guys, I'm just so freaking excited for you in this adventure. Thank you, all 3 of you, for like acknowledging that this was like a window opening and being excited to take an adventure, and then doing all of the coordination and all of the work and all of the driving to make it happen, and also to make it a celebration, because yeah, that's what the 30th anniversary should be. It should be a celebration. So I'm so excited for you guys. And yeah, and for our podcast listeners, we're going to keep you all updated too. Make sure to check out, you know, our website and on social media. We'll be sharing what both Sarah and Jessica are up to, and Pat, of course, you too, what they're up to when they're in DC. And yeah, we cannot wait. We can't wait for the celebrations to happen. And we're so happy that you guys are out there doing that. So huzzah, huzzah.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm so excited to share. It'll be awesome.
It's so good. So actually with that, the other fun part of what is happening today, if you are listening, is as we transition into our guest. It's a guest that you guys know very, very well if you've been listening along. Sarah, you are officially a doctor, and you are officially a doctor who just completed all of her work and has taken all of her tests and has done all of her schooling. And as you were working so hard in completing that, you know, we were talking and we found it really important to share the work on the show that you had been doing and what you've been studying so hard on in school. And so we made the executive decision to make Sarah officially Dr. Sarah, excuse me, our guest expert for this episode. And we are going to talk through, all of her work specifically within your capstone project. And yeah, that's what we're going to hop into now. So, I mean, you all know Sarah, so let's learn about all of the awesome work that she's done.
Dr. Sarah Tuberty has a lived experience of a congenital hand difference. After earning a BS in biology from St. Mary's College in California, she became an AmeriCorps volunteer and then a flight attendant. In volunteering at the Philadelphia Shriners Hospital and through her work on the planning team at Camp Winning Hands, she discovered the profession of occupational therapy. She returned to school at Boston University and has since earned her doctorate of occupational therapy. This episode is all about her final capstone project, the creation of an online resource for parents and children with congenital limb differences. This work is the culmination of 10 years of Camp Winning Hands work and 3 years of her graduate level studies with a personal emphasis on congenital hand differences.
Today is the day where our co-founder and co-creator, Sarah Tuberty, enters into the realm of being the co-creator, the co-asker of questions, into officially being an expert. So we're here today. We have Sarah Tuberty as our guest. Sarah, welcome to Deciding Disability.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you. I am so excited to be here. As always, this is one of my favorite projects that's very near and dear to my heart, and also just really excited to be able to share what I've been working on and really how my work with occupational therapy has led me to be to this point in my life right now. I feel this is definitely something that has been part of my narrative for a large part of my life, and so I'm excited to share all of these really cool things with you. And just thank you for your patience just thank you for being here when we were recording season 1. I was like knee deep in my clinical placement, very stressed out. But now everything is graduated. I have my degree. I'm licensed. I passed my board exams. And I'm done, which is a very wild place to be. And I'm very excited.
Yeah, so I'm going to, in a second, ask you to actually break down what that means and all of those goodies. But I want to just add another layer of accolade. I mean, so much of this podcast for Sarah and I was the acknowledgement that we're experts in the sense that we understand our everyday and we understand our culture. So yes, we're experts in our experience, but we're not experts in disability. And so we've been on the hunt to really find people who have researched and people who have studied and people whose job it is every single day to talk about or do disability work. We wanted those experts. And so to watch Sarah cross over from advocate into official expert just really is the coolest thing, because there's so much, I feel like, ownership that goes along with that and that I've watched you take on, which I think is so cool. So yeah, can you officially tell us, please, what did you go to school for? How long did that take? How many, letters do you have after your name now? Can you kind of give us the basic breakdown of how you became an expert, please?
I would love to. All right. So I went to school to be an occupational therapist, and I made this decision after I graduated from undergrad. Occupational therapy is a graduate level degree, and so I had gone to my undergraduate school. I had majored in biology. I wasn't sure how I wanted to navigate forward with that. I sort of explored a couple of different options. I thought about maybe being a teacher. So I worked in the school for a minute, and then life happened, and I became a flight attendant, which was very exciting. But it had been about 4 years between my undergrad to my graduate school education from when I started grad school, which is awesome. And in that process, there was still 5 prerequisites in order to be able to apply for occupational therapy school that I didn't have because I didn't know that I had wanted to be an occupational therapist or hadn't considered it when I was in my undergrad. So I had to take 5 prerequisite classes, all things that would have been fit under a health science type degree. I had to take abnormal psychology and medical terminology and child life psychology. So things were all really fascinating and interesting to me. And then once I took those, it took me 2 years to apply to school too. So taking those classes, and then I had to study for the GREs, which are needed in order to be able to apply for graduate school. And then the actual applications for OT schools themselves, and those were very lengthy and involved. And then I went to school to be an occupational therapist. There's currently, in 2020, there are 2 different routes that you can take if you're interested in going to occupational therapy school. One is a master's level degree, that is typically done in 2 to 2.5 years, depending on how the school organizes the clinical experiences, which in the practice of occupational therapy is called fieldwork experiences. And then you can do a doctorate degree, which has an extra level or an extra year or so sort of tacked onto it. And the purpose of that is to really further the research that occupational therapy can provide, and then can sort of teach at a higher level within that. So just making sure that we're providing outcome measures, that we're producing more research, that we're doing more projects to help advance the field of occupational therapy is sort of what the doctorate level is geared for. And so we did a doctorate level project. I chose the doctorate level route. I applied to both master's and doctorate programs because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted. But I ended up choosing the doctorate level because I knew because this is who I am. I knew that I wanted to start teaching at some point later in my career. I knew that I wanted to be, like a department head or like leaders of projects or leaders of different types of things, potentially research, whatever that looks like. And those things are just more accessible if you have a doctorate level degree, more so than master's. Master's is like, hey, I'm an occupational therapist. I want to be a therapist. I want to work in direct patient care. I can do projects, of course, here and there, but I feel like the doctorate level sort of adds more, like there's more of an expectation to be engaging in those types of activities, whether that be like research or education or, running departments or things like that. So I chose the doctorate route, and I went to Boston University, and it was a 3-year program. So it was September to September. And we had online classes in the summertime in addition to our school-based work. The first 2 years we were at school. And then the final year we did clinical rotations, and they're both, we did 3-month placements where I was working like you essentially work as an OT and you're heavily mentored in the beginning, and they gradually sort of your mentor gives you more freedom to take over. So you're carrying a full caseload by the end of it. And that is just like really practice, right? Because when you're in school, everything's theoretical. We're learning a lot of the models. We're learning, in theory, how do you do all these different types of assessments and evaluations. But then when you're in practice, like actually working with somebody who has had a variety of different things that they're coming to you with, and they're a real person, right? They're not your classmate. It's different. So in order to see what that really looks like and what it looks like to manage full caseloads and to be in a mentored setting, that way we can prove that we are capable to be able to be an entry-level OT, which is great. So we did 2 clinical rotations, one of which I was with you in Chicago. That was my second rotation. And then I did my capstone project. So that was sort of the doctorate level bit. And we did maybe like 2 or 3 classes that we just did to prepare for the doctorate project. And then I had to write this really big paper. And I had like a dissertation that was published, which is really exciting. And didn't really ever think that was something that happened in my life. So and then I graduated in September. So I graduated, and at that point I was Sarah Tuberty, OTD, which means that I have a doctorate in occupational therapy. And my doctorate is similar to like a JD for people who went and graduated law school, or an MD for people who have gone to med school. So it's that type of doctorate. It's not a like philosophical doctorate that's like a PhD. Those are different. So I have a clinical doctorate, but it's still that doctorate level. And then once I graduated from OT, once I graduated from BU, saying that I met all the requirements in order to graduate, I was eligible to sit for our the NBCOT, so it's the National Certification Board of Occupational Therapy. They provide an exam that all of the therapists who want to actually practice therapy with people need to take and then pass this exam. And it's kind of stressful because it's really hard to assess somebody's knowledge of working with a person when you're not actually having them work with, like how do you standardize that experience? So the questions are all very involved. They're kind of fun, but still very stressful in that. And then just that this is determining your ability to practice as an OT, right? If you don't pass the exam, then you can't be an OT, and then you have to, take the exam again. So, which is fine, right? So that happens, but it's still, there's a lot of pressure that goes into it. And then once you pass the exam, then I became Sarah Tuberty OTD, OTR, which means that I'm an occupational therapist that's been registered. So I passed that in December, which is really exciting. And then once you have that, then you can apply for licensing in the state. You can be licensed in multiple states, but it's kind of like there's a lot of paperwork and things that need to go into applying for license and money, right? So you have to, apply and pay for licensing in different states. And then each state has sort of different requirements in order to keep up with their license. So I just received my license to be able to practice in the state of Pennsylvania as of last week, which is really exciting. I got it in the mail. So now I am Sarah Tuberty, OTD, OTR/L. So that means I am a registered occupational therapist and I'm licensed.
I love that. I'd love to specifically pick your brain about the thesis work that you did and the time that you spent really creating something really cool and researching and kind of doing the crowning jewel of, I guess, if you will, your OT work. Can you tell us? Can you tell us what topic you chose first? And let's just start with that. What was the topic that you chose, and maybe at its most basic why?
Yes, we had the freedom to really kind of build what we wanted our capstone projects to look like. Our capstone projects, our thesis projects, they're the same. Those are interchangeable words. And we really, we took classes sort of deciding or really looking like what is a need and what is something that we're able to create in a specific time frame to help address that need. And I had worked very closely with Shriners Hospital in Northern California, which is a hospital that I had had a variety of surgeries on when I was younger, and I volunteered there throughout my life. That's the one that the Hand Camp has partnered with in order to put on Camp Winning Hands. And then I worked very closely with my hand surgeon, Dr. James, who we sort of heard about in our last episode, which was really fun. So I reached out to Dr. James, and I just was like, hey, I am going to we do this occupational therapy capstone project. Is there any need that you see within the hospital that I could help address? And Dr. James was like, yes, I have lots of projects that I love to do, and one of them is building sort of a parent resource. When children come in, and particularly around children who are born with limb differences, right? Because when we're born with something, there's lots of layers of things, right? Because this is something that's not expected, versus having an acquired hand difference. That is something that there's like a different set of psychological things that come along with that, right? So this was really to help address parent concerns when they find out that they have a baby with a different hand. So I really looked into, and then we sort of went back and forth as far as what that would look like. And then as we were building the project, it really came to be that having an online parent resource page would be the most accessible format that parents could be able to look up and reference whenever they needed to throughout their journey of being parents. So it is up and running, and we built a website.
Yeah, it's amazing, Sarah, what you built. And I think the need that you identified and the need that you filled is, every single day more and more parents, of course, are having ultrasounds, and they're learning that they're going to have a child born soon with one hand, and immediately they start going to look for resources. And I think our community has been pretty successful in gathering, but I think we've been really unsuccessful in gathering and then providing information. And so there has been this huge gap of what to realistically expect when you have a child born with one hand. And you really, to get into the nuts and bolts of it, you really identified what some of those things were. Can you share about the different facets that you actually identified and the research that kind of is shown throughout your page?
Sure. There is not a ton of research on the experience of having a children with a limb difference, which is really kind of cool because all of the articles that I had access, I read essentially all of the articles that existed about having a child with a limb difference. Aside from actual surgical interventions, I didn't read those articles as much, like how to do a surgery, but I read sort of everything else, and there's not a ton of research, which was cool that I was able to read pretty much everything that exists. But then also makes me sad that there's not a ton of research on it. But we're getting there. Dr. James is doing a lot of stuff. There's a lot of really prominent individuals who are doing research, which is really amazing. So, and then it was interesting to read research throughout time. There's a couple articles that were written in the 80s, and hearing the words that were used to describe us is pretty powerful. So there's things like parent guilt and distress over having a deformed baby, and there's something like the blight of the malformed child, and parents don't want to be. Oh, here's another one. Okay, so the blight of a malformation, particularly where it is visible and hence embarrassing, is a crushing blow to the parents and to everyone else who has shared in the event. And it's just really powerful to know that these are the words that were written to describe us. This is how healthcare professionals are writing about us in research. And then the words that we use really shape our thought patterns. And to think that this article is written in 81, so these are the thought patterns that our parents had as they were raising both us, right, you and I, Nikki. And of course that there's a lot, and then just going into all of these microaggressions and all of the stigma that really existed. So when parents did have a child that had a limb difference, they feel that it's a crushing blow to everybody involved, and it's embarrassing, and it's this malformation. So of course it's this very not positive event to have. So I feel that we've changed our language over the years about it, but still, this article wasn't written that long ago, and to really see that those are the words that are being used to describe us was really powerful for me. And then sort of how have we grown from there to then sort of really research what are some of the problems that our kids are having, and what are some of the challenges we're facing, and things like that. So from all of this research that we integrated, and again, knowing that it doesn't cover everything, there isn't a research article that has been studied or being written to address every single need that we have, but really sort of pulling together and synthesizing the research that does exist on the things that we do know. We built this website, and you can find it at Shriners, SHRINERS, children, CHILDRENS.org/hand differences. And you can access it. We'll have a link on the bottom of this episode page. And from there, you'll be brought to our homepage, and we go through all of these different topics. So we have the child experience, and it really goes over what is a microaggression, what is stigma, what are ways that we can adapt things, what are sort of the developmental milestones that kids will have, because I know sort of in conversations with different healthcare professionals at Shriners, and again, this has been a large majority of my life, so I've been pretty familiar working with different healthcare professionals at Shriners, and particularly with kids with limb differences through all my work with Canceling Hands as well. That there tends to be, parents will bring in a child at age 3 and they're like, oh my God, my kid's not tying their shoes. Looking at developmental milestones, kids don't tend to do that activity until later. So it's okay that your child's not doing that right now. And this is just sort of looking at what are bilateral tasks that kids are doing at these various age points in both fine and gross motor, and how can you help support the kid at that time, not the kid, your child, how can you best support your child in doing these different types of activities? And also, maybe your child doesn't do these types of activities, and that's fine. It doesn't mean anything else that your child has adapted to be able to do that activity in sort of a different way. Then another thing that Dr. James was talking about in our last conversation was really covering the social and emotional anticipatory guidance. And this came out from 2 different research articles that was really interesting and so meta, I think, for me to realize that there is this psychosocial development that is happening with kids that do have visible differences. And there's a lot of research that comes from hand differences, burns, and cleft palate. Those kind of came together in research, and sometimes they would kind of pull from different bodies of research. Like Sally had mentioned that some of the hand difference things that we're using is being pulled from burn research because it has a physical appearance that is different in interacting with people and being a child interacting with people and trying to develop the relationships. So it's just really interesting that around 3 to 5, people start noticing their hand. They'll start, asking why does my hand look different? But children maintain their self-esteem at that point. They don't really recognize that it's anything that's different or bad. They're just oh, okay, whatever, this is different. I'm noticing it. My hand doesn't look like your hand, but but the children themselves don't tend to really understand the weight of what that means or how they fit into the world. But that really happens at age 6 to 8, where kids then really start, just in development in general, kids are really looking to the external environment to build their self-concept, and they're really listening to those external messages. So at that point, when kids are then meeting other children and other children are like, ew, what's your hand look like that or whatever, then they're like, oh, this is something that's different about me, and that different isn't necessarily the most positive thing. If we exist in this world where microaggressions exist, where we don't have the most positive support or language that we're using for people who have disabilities or have these visible differences. And then it's at this point where the child realizes their hand is different, realizes sort of what that means in our social world, and that the hand can't be fixed. Like they often, Dr. James was talking about how they can come into the hospital and they really want a hand that looks like an expected hand, so like what we expect hands to look like. So they'll be really sort of seeking for like what type of surgeries can we do to make my hand look like this sort of like expected hand, or how can I have a type of device that will be able to create this expected hand for me. And at this age, they really don't have the sort of problem-solving skills to be able to like cope with like the crisis that happens. And it's interesting because even reflecting in my own journey, I was having that crisis as I started a new school with new peers. So I wasn't even with any of the kids that I grew up with. So like, oh, I understand why that was a particularly devastating time for me and how I felt that I fit into the world, because I was experiencing this crisis coupled with, like, I was entering my crisis while I was entering a new school. So none of these kids knew me. None of them had grown up with me. They all were weirded out by me, if you will. I mean, maybe that's not the right language to use about myself, but they all were just very confused by me, didn't know how to navigate me. They're realizing that things are different. I felt all of those microaggressions and then was like, oh, I'm unworthy. Like, I'm a subhuman. I will exist in this, like, less than human space. So when I was reading that in the research, I was just like, oh, my God. Like, I understand this so much.
And I can tell you exactly mine also. Mine was kind of a couple of moments that really turned it for me. And, of course, in middle school, so right around that age range that we're talking about, where, I mean, I definitely grew up in a safe bubble and didn't move. So really in that safe bubble until I went to middle school. And suddenly there were all these kids who were new kids. And I was on the 7th grade basketball team, and I was horrible at basketball. Terrible. But that didn't matter. Like, all of my friends were doing it, so I had to do it. And we were playing another team, and the ref blew his whistle because my shoe was untied, right? No foul or anything. And he just pointed at me, and he's like, hey, you need to tie your shoe, because that's what happens in basketball when a player's shoe is untied. Right. I bent down to very quickly tie my shoe, which is something that I learned, in kindergarten. And I remember the other team whispering, and it caught me so off guard at that age, and it was so insulting, and it was so hurtful. And I looked up, and I said something sassy to them. I was like, what are you talking about? Or stop talking about me. Or somehow I, like, out loud verbalized it. And I knew from that moment on that my life was never going to be the same as my friends, because I could play basketball all day long right alongside them, but the other team who didn't know me like my team knew me would always be amazed that I could tie my shoe, right? Do the simplest task. They were amazed by that. Their whispers weren't meant to be mean or hurtful, but they were navigating the idea that in my difference, I still was able to tie my shoe. And, that was kind of the launch pad into my starting to attempt to navigate the idea of, oh, my experience isn't like my friends. And I didn't have any guidance at that time. So it was just a lot of cognitive dissonance, where my parents would tell me things were okay and that I was quote unquote normal. And then I would have experiences like that where I would be like, but no, I'm not. Because the rest of my friends don't have that. This is cognitive dissonance. That's not right. Someone's now telling me the full truth here, what's going on.
Yeah.
We need to better prepare people. Like, we need parents to understand that that's the stage kids are going to enter into, and we need to equip them with the right language and the right tools, which is exactly what your website is doing.
Yeah. It all comes back to, like, finding the things that work for your child. And that's something I really appreciate about our conversations with both Sally and Dr. James, is that like that the child is at the center of care. So it's like whatever that the child like wants or needs or finds interest in, or whatever language that they really appreciate, you know, like really sort of looking to them and what they need versus sort of taking our own ideas, you know, as a healthcare provider, as a whatever, like role model, as a parent, and sort of superimposing those ideas onto the child and making the child believe them. Like those are two different things. So really finding like what are the words that the child, you know, likes, and you can try out different things. And there are various resources within the website that sort of go over how do you manage conversations, how do you create yourself a story. One thing I really liked from the research was this concept of a social script, and that these are things that like we have social scripts that we've learned throughout our lives that will help us navigate situations. Like when we go to the grocery store, there's like a social script that you say, like, hi, you know, whatever, this is the price. Like you can anticipate that this type of interaction will happen. This is an interaction that's specific to checking out at a grocery store. That's a different than a conversation that you have at a dinner party. Like there's different types of social cues and things that are happening in those different environments. And we don't have social scripts for navigating conversations on disability. So it becomes really uncomfortable for all of us because we don't know the things to say. So there's tools on here so the children can really, or the kids or whoever, you guys as a family, can really build those social scripts, like what, and be really intentional. And I think it's really important to have this conversation and really find out, like, how do we want to describe ourselves to the world as a family and as a kid, because kids will then enter school at 6th grade and the parents won't be there to have the conversations anymore. So how can you really prepare your child to be able to navigate those conversations on their own, whether that be with peers, whether that be with coaches, whether that be with you know, teachers or any type of person. Like it's really important that the child gets to choose the language that they want to describe themselves. They get to call people out if they're not adhering to their language, right? Which then makes me think of that guy at the bar. Do you remember that from season 1? Yeah. And that was like, oh, so you're more deformed. I was like, no, like I don't call myself deformed. Like, let's change this. And that I'm still human that's attached to this hand. And that just because this hand is different doesn't mean that it's a separate part of my body that then can be objectified. And that it's like, oh, it's different. You know, I like the word different. Not everybody likes the word different. That's fine. But really finding like what are the words that we really like. So there's all types of resources there. I created a story several years ago after a hand camp one year when I was talking with a lot of parents who were really having a hard time and really wanting some resources on how can I help my child enter kindergarten, because they're really anxious about that, and how can my child sort of be on their own, and I won't be there to correct people and their behaviors and really, you know, prevent adverse reactions that could feel like bullying or things like that. So I wrote this story called Meet Rosie, and it's like line drawings on paper that I like then wrote in Adobe. It's nothing fancy, but it can be there to use as a model. Like, and this is how I introduce myself. This is how I've introduced myself my whole life. And there's like little descriptions, so that can be used as a way for parents to maybe like do this activity with their kid, or they want to write a song or whatever. Whether anybody sees this book or anything, just the actual act of making the book can be really therapeutic in helping a family decide how do we support their kids. So it's really designed for like parents with new kids. And then there's things that go through the parent experience on the website. There's like we talk about different types of coping behaviors. There's different resources for schools. You know, like how can you talk to teachers? Like what are, you know, things that teachers may need, and you know, how do you have conversations with teachers if you want to have a conversation, if the child has something like a splint or, you know, any or a prosthetic device or anything like that, how can you help support the teacher so they know how to help best support the child if they're having problems with their prosthetic, whatever, just like different outlines for different types of conversations. And then the website is flooded with tons of pictures of kids doing really awesome stuff with lots of different hands, and it just makes me really happy.
Totally. I think, yes, everything that you're saying, it just is, it's such a beautiful depth, again, of resource. That's what it is. Your children, the bottom line is that for parents, you're not going to be with your child at every moment of the day. Right. And in fact, for a majority of the hard moments, you aren't there. And that's okay. That's okay. But why are you not preparing for that? And what are the tools that you can use? Even, you know, like it's not the parent's fault that they don't understand the experience, because that's okay. You weren't born with one hand. So what are the resources that we can give them to adequately set their kid up for success, because we know that's what parents want. We know that they just want to set their kiddo up for success. We know that they just want to have those conversations. They want to encourage their child. They want to give their child what's best. And I think that these building blocks, these are building blocks of resources for parents totally to immerse themselves in and to get a better understanding, both kind of research-based wise, what's happening, and to be able to identify those moments and then set your kid up for success. Who doesn't want that? Like, it's great. It's so great. Who doesn't want that? Everybody wants that.
Yes. We all want, and it's about, like, pick the things that make sense to you. Like, there's no one right way to do this. The right way to do this is the one that sets up your child in the way that works best for your child and for your family, and every single child and family is different. And that's okay. But just because one family is navigating something one way doesn't mean that has to be the way that you navigate your life experience. And I'm sure that parents will feel a lot of conflicting information. And, sometimes people have very, very strong opinions on whatever thing, if it's a type of intervention or to do surgery or not, or get prosthetics. Like, these are really hard decisions and complicated. And each parent, make the decision that makes best sense to your family. And that's what matters. That's the center of it. So these are just different options. It was really interesting too to look in the research, and there is research on just like family system theory and like parent theory, and so I read a lot of research on hand differences. I also read a lot of research on sort of like children with disabilities. I read a lot of research on like parents of children with disabilities, and so it sort of extended beyond hand differences, and because hand differences really sort of within that larger like society puts us in the disability category. And I know that hand difference really sort of exists at that intersection of being both able-bodied and disabled at the same time. And again, I know people have opinions on words that they like to use. So just I like to feel like I belong in the disability community because I identify with that after reading research on the disability community. So things that parents are saying about having children that had differences and disabilities, it didn't matter the disability. A lot of the parent feelings are the same, and it's just really interesting that in order to best set up their children and display positive coping mechanisms for their children, or like engaging coping mechanisms with their children, is for the parents themselves to engage in it. So if parents are having a really hard time coping with the fact that their child has a limb difference, and if there were biological parents who then feel guilt and shame for producing a child that has something different about them, that they feel all of this guilt, like, oh, it was something that I did, or, whatever, the gods are punishing me, or, I ate peas on the 57th day of being pregnant, like whatever type of, thing that parents can feel, that like parent guilt is so real. And that's something, and like shame is real. And like, those are things that parents, can process. And some parents, maybe an afternoon, or some parents takes a long time, but the way that parents cope with having a child with limb difference shows how the child is good. Like the children are learning those coping behaviors. So if parents are really engaging in like disengaging coping behaviors, where the parents want to disengage, when sometimes maybe that's appropriate at the moment. I don't, it depends, whatever. But if parents perhaps want to disengage with the fact that their child has a limb difference, maybe they'll try to hide the hand and they'll sort of hide it. But then the children take on those behaviors. So then they learn like, oh, this is how I cope with it, is I hide my hand, or things like that. So just being really mindful and really taking the time to really cope, and that it's okay to feel guilt and shame for these things, and like take the moment to process that as the person, process that as a partnership, if you have a partnership, if you're raising children with limb differences, and be really intentional about what that means. And some parents don't feel that, and that's totally fine. There's a huge spectrum of different experiences that parents are having, but it just is really interesting to read that, particularly in the research. And then that impacts how the children themselves view themselves with a hand difference.
Yay! Yeah, Sarah, we went a lot of different directions there. What kind of in closing here, what didn't I ask you about? What's on your brain as far as now, being a doctor and doing this research and kind of entering into this expert space? What do you want to leave us with? What should we know?
Oh, what should we know? I think that, what should we know? I think it's just really that having hard conversations is a good thing. Like, let's be self-aware. Let's do worksheets. I love worksheets. And like
she does, it's true.
Oh my gosh, I love them.
Can confirm. I did not go back to school with Sarah, but I've done several Sarah worksheets, okay?
I love them. I was telling my mom, I was like, if I ever get married and have a partner, that like we will be a worksheet household. We will worksheet everything out, and I don't care who makes fun of me for it. My children will be so self-aware, which I love. So I think that's like really taking the time to be mindful. Like, what is it that we're feeling? Like, what are our own glass walls? Like, are there certain things that we're bumping up against that we can't quite figure out what they are? And really take the time to intentionally process that. And really, if it is putting things down in like a mind map or a worksheet or, whatever, different ways that I like pen and paper type tasks, but you could do it on a computer or journaling or any of that type of stuff, to really like take a time and reflect on like who you are and where do you want to be and what are some of the barriers that you're facing in order to get there. I mean, I feel like that's occupational therapy sort of in a nutshell. And I think that can really benefit all of us in anything that we're trying to do.
I love that. Yeah, amazing. Yes, I have nothing more to say. That was amazing. So thank you, Sarah, for giving us your time tonight and for sharing your specific expertise. I speak for our entire community, and I say that I can't wait. I can't wait to see. Like, I feel like this experience for you was just like the springboard, the jumping off point. And I just am so excited for the depth of work that you're going to accomplish in the future for our community. And I just think you're going to bring so many wonderful things to the surface or bring so many beautiful things to the light, if you will. So I can't wait. I think you're going to be a really positive force in the culture change, and I'm just honored to be your friend. So congratulations, and we are so proud of you for completing your hard work and becoming an expert.
Oh, thank you. Well, and, I wouldn't be able to do it without you too, Nikki. So I really, I think this is just like make Sarah cry season, because I feel like that's all I'm doing in all of these episodes. But I just am so thankful for just who you are, and really, because I know that we've talked about your experience and your journey and coming into disability and all those things. And I just really appreciate the way that you went about that, and wanting to start this podcast and wanting to start these conversations, and that really put a sense of agency and responsibility on myself to really sort of rise up to the need. And I think both of us rising up to the need that exists. And I appreciate, oh my gosh, you helped me so much with this website. And I just was like, okay, so what do you think of this thing? And, what do you think about the language here? Or like, what resources do you have to be able to, we have a section on different children's books that kids could read or parents could read or whatever. So just really help with all these different pieces. And then just the appreciation of reaching out to your mom and having your mom be a parent profile on our website. So, I think that we're really in this
Pam
together.
Keller is on the website. That's
true. Yeah, she is. And just really fun how we're really taking this and building it. And I think just like putting that, like, not only are we really advocating for our community, but like really making sure that we're educating ourselves on it, so that we're really collecting, like, I don't know, I feel like there's that bridge of, what our research community saying, and then what are our community saying, people who are living it too, and how can we really blend those and merge them so that we're the most informed group, because it's helpful when we know things about ourselves, right? So
it's the blend of like culture and research and feelings, and it's a blend of so many things. They all exist, I feel like, but it's a matter of like wrangling them all into one area that I feel like we both have been really committed to, and I think the only reason that we really are so passionately do this, and that you so passionately pursued the degree that you have and will continue to do the work that you have, I mean, earnestly, I think that just speaks to the depth of searching and not understanding that both of us faced growing up, right? There were answers that we refused to stop looking for. And I think that we found answers. And because we found answers, I kind of like feel like the bearer of the good news, where I'm like, there are answers
I know what questions you've asked. I've been there. And so let's bring in the people who know the answers to that, because you don't have to feel lost and you don't have to feel alone. And there is research and there is, you know, I just feel like, but again, in a sad way, it speaks to the loneliness or hurt or lostness, perhaps, that we at points in our life did feel. So, hopefully we're using it for good. I enjoy doing it, so high five.
Yay. I do want to touch on that that aspect of hurt too. I sent this to you too, and I would be happy to share it on our website. But when my parents are moving out of our family home this summer, they had all of these boxes of, like, you know, they saved every single paper of homework that I did in kindergarten. I was like, oh my God, really, guys? But I was going through a lot of
love you.
Oh, I mean, it's like parents, right? You're like, oh, I want to save this. Like, it's like it's math homework. Like, nobody, okay, fine. But anyway, so we're going through all these boxes of things, and I came across this picture that I drew when I was in third grade, and it is like my heart broke when I looked at it, and it is this very sad tree on a hill, and there's like this cave, and it's just like dark. It's like very hard pressure, choppy lines. Like this tree is like the bark of it is just so dark. None of the branches are like standing up and tall. They're all slumped over. It's just very droopy. You know, and then just like looking at the hurt that is in this picture, like this drawing that I made. I don't know why I made it or where it came from, and I don't even remember making it, but just seeing this image of this, like just this hurt that this girl was making or was feeling when she made it, and then looking in the bottom corner and it says Sarah Tuberty, third grade, and just like that helped give me such validation that what I was experiencing in third grade, you know, because retrospectively we think of things different than how we perceive or how we were experiencing them at the time, because you know, the way that we remember it and the way that we store it in our memory. But it just gave such validation that my 8-year-old self was hurting so badly, and I was so confused, and I was like hardcore in crisis. Just to see that and be like, wow, and to really help prevent our kids now from feeling that or feeling that intensely. And then that has sort of become like a metaphor with like, okay, so I feel like we all kind of make the stop at the sad tree, because that's a place of hurt that we're all kind of feeling because we're humans and we have a human experience. But like, how can we prevent ourselves from building homes there? Because I absolutely built a home by that sad tree, and I lived there for a good 20 years. And really realizing that and like not feeling shame for myself for like moving into that space, because I definitely, like, the core of myself lived there. I think superficially I was a very like happy, outgoing kid that was like, this isn't a problem, but like my deepest self absolutely went home to that sad tree every night, you know? So it's like, how can we pick up and just sort of stop there without building homes there? And then I think moving on and being able to build our homes in better places. So that just was really powerful for me too, in conjunction with the research that I was reading. It just liberated myself from the things that I reading and research is saying that is real, knowing that I experienced as it being real was like, oh my gosh. And then what can we do? Like Sally was sort of talking in her podcast episode 2 was how can we help begin to develop interventions to slow that, to stop that, to keep people from building homes there, or keep our 8-year-olds from building homes there.
Yep. Totally. I mean, you couldn't have said it better. And that directly, I feel like, speaks to exactly what you're saying, the reasoning for doing the literal homework that you've done. And if you can just have one kid, like, I feel like that speaks so much to the reason to build the website, right? Like those are the resources, and those are the links, and those are the places that could have been helpful to a third grade Sarah. And so I think it's amazing. It's amazing. So huzzah, and congratulations. And thank you so much. I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. For sharing about your experience. Of course, you're going to continue to be an expert, and we will continue to pick your brain as you find more delectable pieces of information to share with us.
Yay, I'm so happy.
So much fun all the way around.
And I'm just really thankful and appreciative and just really proud to be at the space where we are. I'm really proud of us for building this podcast. I'm really proud of us for putting in the time and the long hours in order to make this happen. So this is absolutely a labor of so much love from both of us, and we're really excited. And thank you for joining us on season 2 journey. And we're really excited for everything else we have in store.
We will see you next week.
Yes. All right. Bye.
Thank you for spending part of your day with us. We want to give thanks to our network, Public House Media, for our intro beats to Jason Bartz with Cybernetics. Our logo art, we want to remember Patrice. You can find his work at normalpersons.com.
Be sure to follow Disarming Disability on Facebook and Instagram. And lastly, be sure to check out our website, disarmingdisability.com, where you can find all 13 episodes of Season 1, links to resources, transcriptions, and discussion questions for each episode. And check out our blog where we feature amazing disability advocates. See you next week.
Bye!